Let's talk to Harry Cole, editor-at-large for The Sun. He's got a big piece today in the paper, in his column every single Monday. The lawyer leader lacks judgment yet again. Harry, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
So, another U-turn, this time even a bigger U-turn than the Windsor Field Allowance U-turn. I mean, we've been playing it this morning, you know, Cabinet Minister after Cabinet Minister telling us why back in January we didn't want a national inquiry. We already had one, don't need one. There's local ones that are going to be going on. This is all just a far-right sort of, you know, dog whistle, disgraceful stuff. I mean, how much more barefaced can these people be?
Well, yeah, if you look back to 6 months ago, back in January, there was even a vote in the House of Commons that the Labour whipped their MPs against.
Yeah.
Even MPs that are now welcoming the inquiry actually were forced by Labour whips through the division lobbies to vote it down. Mysteriously, Starmer managed to have a diary clash that day, so he didn't make that vote alongside some senior members of his cabinet. It's a classic Starmer, this one, in the fact that lots of people around him, lots of people in government thought there was an inevitability that there was probably going to have to be an inquiry at this point. But instead of getting on the front foot, leaning in, frankly saying, look, I banged up some of these people when I was director of prosecutions. I know about all this, and I think we should have an inquiry. He obfuscated and he set up a review. He tried to kick it into the long grass, hope it'd all go away. He clearly didn't want to give in to Elon Musk and reform and the Tories who were pushing for this inquiry. So he sort of dug his heels in, and it's kind of classic that the review has now come back 6 months later and said, you know what, actually we do need an inquiry. And just like he wasn't able to say, the obvious that a woman can't have a penis. Yeah. Women need their own safe spaces protected, like bathrooms. Until a judge had said that in the Supreme Court, Starmer sort of was all over the place on it. And then once a judge said it, he said it. Now he's hiding behind this review that says, yes, we should have we should have an investigation. And lo and behold, here he is saying, oh, now I think we should. So why can't he ever just actually lead and actually see the wood from the trees in front of him and get on the front foot? It's a remarkable trait that he seems to have, that he always ends up looking, whether or not he is, he always makes it look like he's being dragged kicking and screaming. Things he doesn't want to do. Because
it looks as though he behaves not as if he's in politics, but as if he's in the law and he's in the legal business, that he's going to wait until he goes into the meeting with the senior partners to say, oh, look, I found this piece of legislation that we can use to win the case. It's almost like that's how he's operating, because I presume that he set Dame Louise Casey off on the report so that she would come back and say there's no need for a national inquiry. So he's kind of got that wrong as well, because he should have seen that that's what she was going to say.
Yeah, and look, Louise Casey's quite a prominent figure. She's the sort of woman that was brought in to make sticky problems for ministers go away. She does the hard thinking when ministers find it too tough, and she's done lots of these reports and audits and things like that. She's doing one on social care at the same time, and various other bits and bobs. The idea that in this climate, in this political mood, in this outrage around the country, people are furious about this. The idea that she was going to come back and be, I'll be Starmer's whipping boy on this. I'll be the woman that says we don't need an inquiry. And when it was so blindingly obvious that we did need an inquiry, just from the facts that were publicly available at the time. So this idea that she's suddenly uncovered some new mystery about the fact that hundreds of Pakistani origin men raped, drugged, abused thousands of British girls. That's not new information. That is enough. There was enough information in the public domain in January to say, why don't we bring this all together for once? Why don't we have this moment of national reckoning about such a big scandal? And the idea that Louise Casey was going to be a human shield for Keir Starmer not to have an inquiry is daft. I suspect she was always going to have to come back and say there would be. So if he thought that was going to make it go away, then he's been hoisted by his own petard. And you're right. There's lots of people that have worked with him in opposition and in government who say he has this sort of I know best trait, which even people around him, his advisors, his closest aides, often can't, they want him to do the right thing. They want him to succeed, but he locks himself away at times, makes decisions on him that he believes are the correct ones, and then will not take advice on stuff. So, which is not a great trait for a PM, because the best PMs are the ones that actually do listen to the people around the table and then make decisions. As you said at the top, we get to these situations where suddenly it turns out he doesn't know best, and then the slow, painful U-turn has to be executed, and we're going to add this to a long, growing list of them.
We are. And Rachel Reeves was at pains yesterday to try and point out that it's the victims that really matter. Have a look at what she said to Trevor Phillips.
Quoting here, and misinformation, and those who were more or less accused of racism for raising this issue?
The most important thing is getting justice.
No, this is what I've asked you is the most important thing.
Well, no, Trevor.
For many people who were criticised in that way.
Trevor, what is the most important thing
here? Of course,
it is
the position of the victims. I understand that.
It is the victims, and it's not people's hurt feelings about how they've been spoken about.
So apparently they don't care about people's hurt feelings, which is nice to know, isn't it?
Well, I think they will care about people's hurt feelings when those people get down the ballot box. It's all very well. They may try to tough this one out, but Keir Starmer very clearly said that this was a far right bandwagon that people were jumping on. People calling for an inquiry into this issue were jumping on a far right bandwagon. He said that in the speech on camera. The clip, we've all seen the clip. Yeah. We'll see it again a lot today, I suspect. We'll hear about it in the House of Commons when he stands up. Well, when Yvette Cooper stands up later to give a statement on this inquiry. He says, "Oh, I was talking about politicians. I wasn't talking about voters." But people heard it. How the people heard it. So, look, of course, Rachel Reeves is right. The most important thing is the victims, and that's why we need to have this inquiry. But you can't escape the fact that the government have bungled over this. They have put themselves on the wrong side of public opinion. They put themselves on the wrong side of history, and they only have themselves to blame for that. So the idea that we should suddenly forget what they said in January, I'm getting annoyed now, but the idea that we should magically forget that they have absolutely gone about this cat-handedly, they must have another thing coming, because people won't forget that what he said, and they were upset, and they were hurt, and they were insulted.
Yeah. Absolutely
because they were right.
And you're right to say that we'll be hearing that clip far more today. We've already played it about 8 times. I'm going to play about another 8 times before the end of the show, because we can't let them get away with it. We've also got a montage of almost every senior cabinet member saying why we don't need a national inquiry, because it's not just about taking different advice and learning from your mistakes and saying, OK, we didn't think we needed one then. They were vociferous. They were anti anyone who said that they wanted. You remember Lucy Powell when she accused Tim Montgomery of blowing a dog whistle when he asked about, the Panorama documentary about the grooming gangs and the victims. And it's not just about the victims. It is, of course, about them. But what I think Trevor Phillips was getting at was that the cover-up is also a very important part of this inquiry. We need to know who covered it up, what Labour councillors did what they knew, when they knew it, why the police didn't prosecute, why the police were happy to stand by and let it keep continuing to happen. I think all of those things need to be in there.
Of course they do, and there's no doubt that this has a potential to be very politically painful for the Labour Party, and so that's why people, I think, assume that he was dragging his feet on this. It looks especially bad for Starmer, given that he did prosecute rape gangs. He did put people in prison for this when he was a prosecutor. Yet as soon as he was party leader, it looked like, whether rightly or wrongly, the perception looked like he was trying to continue avoiding scrutiny. And there has been a massive cover-up. This was a majority of Labour-run authorities with simpleton social services who turned a blind eye willfully, or perhaps even just because they were stupid and couldn't see what was happening, or perhaps they were so blinded by their mantra of political correctness and multiculturalism and cultural enrichment that meant that they thought that keeping community tensions down was more important than protecting and branding, young women prostitutes or slags instead of actually victims of child abuse was more important than actually defending them and getting justice for their abuse. And that's gone on for years across multiple parts of northern England, multiple parts of Labour-run authorities, aided and abetted by multiple police forces. And this inquiry's got to get to all of that. It's got to be televised. It's got to have the same sort of powers that the COVID inquiry had of compelling people to turn up, not just compelling people to turn up, but turning over their emails, their phone records, all of it. Yeah. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. It may be expensive. It may take a while, but, we have inquiries like this at a drop of a hat, it seems at times. This one, the most important and horrible, horrific blot on our national history, victims and the wider country deserve to get to the absolute bottom of it.
Absolutely right. And just one final one before I let you go, because I know this might be a subject close to your heart. Horse racing faces the axe. They're coming for the online betting. They want to put taxes up. Seemingly senior Labour backbenchers are all for this, but not everybody is. So what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's quite a knotty issue, but there's basically various bands of tax. Various bands of taxes for so online gaming is taxed at a slightly higher rate than if you go down the bookies and have a flutter on the dogs, right. Or if you put a bet on or at a horse at a racing meeting, but rather than online. Now, obviously, the Treasury in that classic way, they're looking at two things. One, they don't like multiple bands of tax. They want to sort of harmonise everything, and obviously, when you harmonise stuff, you never tend to actually they never seem to harmonise it at the lower level,
no,
do they?
Funny that.
And the racing industry, which is already suffering from various sort of funding crises, from various gambling reforms that have seen attendance slump, they've seen betting slump. And look, yes, betting is fun. Yep, that people do, but it also is the lifeblood of this industry. It's already suffering. It's already on very low margins. If you make it even harder to bet, or even more expensive to bet, that money will directly stop, going directly into the industry that's already suffering. So, yet again, I can see another sort of, it's a classic thing of the Treasury not thinking beyond their ledger, and tidying up their numbers, and having a direct effect on a beloved British industry. I mean, we've seen it with the farmers, we've seen it with the pasties, we see it every time. Winter fuel payments, another classic example. The Treasury hated those things. They don't like those sort of universal handouts. Yet the politics of this is much more dangerous than the government. Yeah,
absolutely. Great to see you, Harry. Thank you very much indeed. Harry Cole, the editor-at-large at The Sun, with a great column on page 10. He also questions whether Kerry Badenoch and the skids may well be something that come together fairly soon.